I'm going to be interviewing Paul Lowe on the subject of being yourself. For many years I've worked as a therapist, using all kinds of techniques and methods, helping to guide people to cleaner and clearer states of consciousness. Working the last months with Paul, I've seen that he's developed something totally radical, something new, something that's very immediate, easy, and practical. It's simply about being here, being yourself. I wanted to talk to you today about the notion of people just being themselves. Working with you and being with you these last months, I hear you saying again and again, all that people really need to do is be present and be themselves. And I realize that most of us are still somehow very afraid of that. We'd rather do a technique, even something as strong or intense as bioenergetics, rather than just be faced with the simplicity of being ourselves.
I think what's that about is most of what we do, most of the time, is to avoid being ourselves. And that probably started from when we were ourselves as children. We were told we were wrong. We were too noisy, or we made a mess, or we did things at the wrong time, or we wanted attention when the parent was tired and busy. And so how it started, I think, was the child is just being. The child doesn't have any separation at one time. It's just being. So it wants attention. It doesn't think about, I want attention. This being just comes up and pulls. It wants you. It wants your attention. And then the parent says, don't do that. But in saying don't do that, it doesn't say, the parent doesn't usually say, what you are doing is wrong. The parent usually says, you are wrong. So the child begins to tie up its actions with its being. And so the child may have done something out of ignorance, but the parent says, you are wrong. Not what you have done is not convenient to me, which is the truth, because there's no wrong. And so then the child starts to, instead of spontaneously coming, the child starts to look before it comes. So it just wants to come up to the mother and say, Mommy, I want your attention right now, in whatever the child's way of doing it. And then it checks, last time I got hit, last time I got shouted at. So its animal instincts start to check now, and then comes in the thought, is this the right time? And then a separation between the doing and the being happens. And if you see a small child playing in the grass, a really small child, the grass and the child are one. Or playing with the cat, there's no cat out there, they're one, they're just all easing together. And then comes this separation. Now I think what we've been taught is that we've got to watch all the time, because basically we're wrong. Basically we're miserable sinners. Basically we're carrying the sins of our fathers. And so we're wrong. And somewhere that whole thing is going on the time. I'm wrong. Now what a lot of the masters do then is they say, so and so do this. So because you're in such a mess, you've got to do bioenergetics, or you've got to do primal, or you've got to do encounter. You've got to do something to put yourself right. And I don't see that as so. I think if the person is ready to face themselves now, right now, then all you need to look at about yourself just surfaces on its own. But we're very lazy, and we keep looking for shortcuts. And there aren't any shortcuts, but there are quick ways and slow ways. And I think that doing bioenergetics and doing cathartic stuff is not a shortcut. I think that's the long way around. And it's not the quick way. The quick way is to be who you are now. When you do that, all the things you've been told about yourself comes up. You're not worthy, you get angry, you're not loving enough. All these things come in. And we don't want to face that. So let's go and do catharsis instead. And all it is you need to be who you are.
When these uncomfortable things are coming up, when you see yourself being angry, or you see yourself being jealous, or you see yourself being sexual, or you see yourself being inappropriate, how to be with that?
You know, if you've got a really heavy weight that you want to lift, and you decide to use a pulley and a rope to lift it, you can use one pulley and one rope, and you have to pull very hard, but it moves quickly because there's only one rope and one pulley. And then it might be too hard for you to do that, so you use what is called a block and tackle, and you use many pulleys, and then you pull many times, but it's easier to pull. Now, when you do therapy, when you go to somebody, it makes it easier. You can pull and pull and pull, and you don't notice how heavy the weight is. But you've got to pull for a very long time. You've got to work through things. Now, being yourself is no blocks, just you're going to go directly to the source. Now, that's excruciating, because the ego hates seeing who it really is. It hates seeing all the stupid things it's done. It hates seeing how unconscious it's been. It doesn't like doing that. And so you do these therapies in order to be with somebody that says it's okay, and do it this way and do it that way, and you'll get over it eventually. If you don't do that, you go down a vertical line. So let's take an example. Let's say somebody insults you. Now, everybody has a different way of handling it. So some people will completely shut off. They just go dead. Nothing happened. They've gone into the cupboard. Somebody else will immediately get angry. Somebody else will feel sorry for themselves. Everybody has a different way of handling an energy that comes across that is painful. Now, it's painful usually because the person is true, not because they're not true. If they're not true, it normally doesn't touch you. If it's true, it means they're telling you something about you that you don't want to know. So then you produce a number of ways of avoiding that. If you don't do that, you'll find, let's take an example. First, you'll find the anger. If you don't do anything with that anger, you don't express it on the person, and you don't suppress it in yourself. If you don't do anything, you're going to find that under the anger, there's something else. And it might mean that you're hurt. And then you want to do something with the hurt. If you don't do anything with the hurt, you'll find there's another level to that. And there's another level. And one of them is helplessness. If you keep going down, one of the levels you come to is you're helpless. This person's just done something in the way that they've brought your attention to something in yourself. That has started something off in your system that is very uncomfortable, and you can't do anything about it. Because once those chemicals are started, there's nothing you can do. So you've got to stay there and be with it. And we hate being helpless. So instead, we come over the top and do something. Cut off, feel sorry for ourselves, blame the person, who are you anyway to say that? Anything rather than just feel who you are in that moment. Now, that is not who you are. That is what you are experiencing in that moment. So practically that is who you are in that moment. Although not only do you have levels this way of yourself, you have levels of this way of yourself that you're not in touch with at that moment. But all you need to do is feel who you are in that moment. And that's all. You don't need bioenergetics, you don't need primal, you don't need encounter, you don't need breath, you don't need Rolfing. You don't need meditation, you don't need Vipassana, you don't need Zazen, you don't need anything. Because this becomes your meditation. Meditation is nothing else but being totally present. And in fact, most meditations don't do that. They give you a mantra, they give you breathing which takes you away. It's nothing else but being totally present to who you are right now. That means you expand, you become sensitive. You don't contract and become insensitive. You just be who you are and experience what you're experiencing.
There seems to be a key in there that I'm not clear about yet. And that key is when you're feeling something strongly, say you're feeling very angry, how do you feel the anger without suppressing it, shoving it, or making it, saying, not acting it out on someone, or not taking it in on yourself, but how to be present to something in almost neutral gear?
Well, when you say that, what you're saying is, how do I look for the next step? And you don't. You see, that's wanting to go beyond where you are. That's saying, I don't want to be angry, and therefore I am going to avoid being angry. Now what I'm saying is, you accept your anger. You see, throwing it out is not accepting it. Suppressing it is not being with it. I'm talking about, if you're angry, you're angry. Now, if you really accept that, if you don't go out there and you don't go in there, if you're right with your anger and you say, I am angry right now, and you don't try and avoid it, you'll find you're not angry. You'll find just by going right to the very source of the anger, by going into that white hot spot, it's gone. And there's something else. The something else might be better, or it might feel worse. And then you're going to have to do the same thing of that. I don't want to feel this hurt. And then again, you do the same thing. How can I get out of this hurt? I'm going to say, who are you anyway? You don't know what you're talking about. Or I'm going to go back and say, everybody's against me. Instead of just staying right in the middle of the hurt. I am hurting. So your question says, how do I avoid this? And I'm not saying avoid it. You don't. And you don't go into the center of the anger in order for it to go. You don't know whether it's going to go. If you want it to go, then you're not going into the center. You're circling around trying to get rid of it. I'm talking about saying, in that moment, you might be angry for the rest of your life. And it might get worse, and it might get more and more and more. But you're saying, I am going to the center of this. I'm not going to go, I'm going to experience what this anger is. If I throw it on you, I'm not going to experience it. I'm going to try and give it you to deal with. Of course, you don't want to deal with it. You're trying to get rid of your anger. Or I'm going to cut off from myself. I'm going to pretend it's not there. I'm going to close down all my cells, close down my sensitivity. What you have to do is, I am angry in this moment. What is this anger? What is it? And then if you're really there, if you're really, really there, it's gone. If you're not absolutely total with it, you'll start to see what anger is. You'll start to see that a chemical has been released in the body, and you'll feel what that does. You'll feel it rushing through your bloodstream. You'll feel it going into the muscles. You'll feel it bringing up a tension. You'll feel your head change. You'll see that your eyesight has changed. It's gone a little blurred. You'll feel the whole experience of anger. If you experience it without judgment, all it is energy. It's just a rush of energy. If you're trying to avoid it, or you've got a judgment about it, then you'll see it as what you call anger, and all the connotations that go with it.
So let's look for a minute and say that what we would call a normal person who one day, as it happened to me, waking up and saying, I'm not happy with the way I'm living my life right now. I don't know what it is that's going on, but I just know that something's not right. Mm-hmm. So at that time, that's how I started. I went into bioenergetics. I went into work on myself. But what I get from you at this time is that's not necessary to go that way. It's all that's necessary is just to keep paying attention. I'm not happy. Stay with that and stay with that. And somehow the next step will open up.
Just take a look at this. when you wake up in the morning and you feel that you're not happy with the way your life is at the moment, it is an accumulation. It's one compromise after another you've made in your life. It's one dishonesty after another. So your parents said, don't do that. And you didn't do that out of fear or out of wanting their approval. You didn't not do that because you didn't want to do it. You compromised at that time. You didn't just accept what they said. So maybe they said, don't put your hand in the fire. You didn't put your hand in the fire because they told you to. They'll get angry if you do. They'll withdraw their love if you do. You didn't do that because for yourself you knew that was not the thing to do. You suppressed that. And you suppressed one thing after another. So then you get a job, or when you're at school, if you don't say the right things to your particular teacher or master, you're not going to get the marks, or you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get ridiculed in the class. You get to work, you're not going to get the promotion, So you're compromising and compromising. Now, what compromising is to me is lying. You are lying to yourself. Now, if you are absolutely present and you say, I am not going to do that because that person said so, and they'll punish me if I do, then there's an awareness in that. You've taken responsibility. But most of us don't do that. We compromise unconsciously, and that's lying. And that builds up an energy in you. And in fact, that's what kills most people. That's where their cancer comes from. That's where their heart attacks come from, and rheumatism and arthritis. It comes from all energy that hasn't been expressed healthfully. So you wake up in the morning and you've got this backlog, and you see it. Now, in any moment, your path to truth is open. The door never closes. But often the door is in an inconvenient direction. So you wake up in the morning and somewhere in your consciousness is exactly what you need to do. Now that might mean leaving your job, or leaving your family, leaving this house, leaving the studies you're in. But you're going to say, like you always do, how can I get what I want within this situation? In other words, you're compromising again. You're lying again. The fact is, you can't go to work every day with this boss who's on your case because his wife is on his case, because the children are on her case, because her, and so on and so on. Everybody passing down this energy they don't want. You can't go and be happy. But it's a good job and it's good money, and you're afraid of just setting off out into the world. So you compromise. How can I be happy in this situation? You can't. I'm not saying it's not possible to be open and loving in any situation. One day that can happen. But in the situation when you wake up with all this contraction, it's not possible. You need to do something, but you don't want to do it. You don't want to sell your house. You don't want to get rid of your job. You don't want to get rid of your BMW. You want all the goodies and be free at the same time. Now, I'm not saying that that's impossible, but for most people, it's impossible. That's why they feel bad so much of the time. So if you were to wake up in the morning and say, I don't like the way my life is going at the moment, what do I need to do? And you were really ready to do anything, you're already out of it. It's already over. You're already free. But we don't do that. How can I do that and not upset my wife or my girlfriend or my boyfriend or my husband? How can I have it all and be free at the same time? And the answer is, at this stage, you can't. Now, you can either go straight there, and that is you just put a clean piece of paper in front of you and you say, okay, I've got nothing. I'm attached to nothing and nobody in any way whatsoever. It doesn't matter that I spent 7 years in a law school or a medical school. I'm not going to take it for granted that I'm going into law or into medicine. I'm just absolutely here and I'm free. I can do anything I want to. I can go anywhere I want to. You're free. And what will happen is then the higher part of your system, the higher part of your system is the one that makes the intelligent choices. If you're a doctor, it's not the part that remembers the books about your diagnosis. It's the part that just flashes, that's what's wrong with this person. It just flashes there. It doesn't work through it. If you're a lawyer, it isn't the one that remembers all the laws and all the studyings. It's just the ones that go through. That's the way. It just flashes in. Now that part suddenly becomes available to you and it'll say, get out. Don't be here anymore. Or you just need to do this and that. It'll tell you exactly what to do. But only if you're conditionless. If you've got a condition, you've put a barrier in front of that. And then you put another one, and then it can't tell you anything. You can't hear it because you don't want to hear it. It might say get out and you don't want to get out, so you don't hear it. If you really wake up and you really say, I'm ready to do anything and go anywhere, your message will be right there. It might mean you stay exactly where you are, just change your attitude. Or it might mean get out. But you've opened up. But we don't do that. So then you say, how can I get free within this situation? So then you've got to do bioenergetics, or then you've got to do...
Got it. I'm getting an image in my mind of here's London down below, and a magician comes and poof, casts an energy out to the city, which creates everybody getting up in the morning and saying, right, I'm conditionless. Here we go. What's your image of what would happen to London or a place like that? Should something like that just open for everybody? You think
so
everybody
far
would
away
move?
from possibility.
Well, it's far away from the possibility now, but in a sense, if all the disturbances, such as earthquakes and ecological disasters and financial disasters, if all that happens, it will start to break down all of these support systems, and sooner or later something will be free like that. Sooner or later people will start to see that the support systems aren't something to live in, and they will start moving. Do you think everyone will leave their family, stay with their family, go somewhere else, just be cast adrift? What?
Let's just cut through, and rather than following that, let me tell you something else. What I would call is waking up in the morning and being choiceless. You suddenly say, I'm choiceless. I don't know what's best for me or anybody or anything. Let me look at that a little bit. You see, let's take a married couple who are not getting on and they're fighting all the time. That's like most married couples. And they have children. What they say is, we're not going to break up because of the children. And usually that's not true. What they're saying is, I don't want the insecurity of that, or the person who's going to carry the children say, I don't want the responsibility of that. It's not honest. It's usually not true. We don't know what the truth is. Nobody knows what the truth is while they're in the mind. When they move to the intuition, they're likely to flash on truth. Like I was telling you before, it flashes through. But we don't know what's best for us. We just come from the mind. And so, we are scheming inside with our mind about what's best, but it all comes from a place that can't see. The computer isn't big enough to handle all that. And so most of our decisions are based on a base that's too small. If we were to let that go and say, I don't know whether it's better to keep this family together and have the kids around two fighting adults, or whether to let it go, or whether one should go. I don't know. If you move to I don't know, something expands. And what expands is the heart. The heart doesn't expand when we are based on survival. Survival is totally selfish. Most missionaries I met when I was working in Africa were based on survival. They weren't helping people. They were taking care of number one. This is the only way I'm comfortable, by helping those people, so you're going to be helped. It didn't come from the heart. It came from survival. If I don't help you, I'm not going to heaven. It didn't come from an expanded place that this is what I want to do for me. And if you want to share that, it's beautiful. They had numbers. They had to have so many converts. It was survival. That is not the heart. If you come to this place of choicelessness, I don't know, the heart expands. When the heart expands, you start to feel a respect, an acceptance, a loving for yourself. When that happens, automatically, you don't do anything. Automatically, you care for the other, whoever it is. You will never pass a beggar on the street without seeing them, seeing into their heart. And sometimes you might find the beggar's just on a scam. That's his way of enjoying himself. He doesn't need the money. Sometimes you'll find that this person's really suffering. But you will see each person. You will see each cat, each dog, each child, each leaf. You will see. And when you see, you love. It's not a doing. You don't, I love you. Just love is there. As soon as that happens, everything becomes appropriate. So you might say, so if this magician waves his wand over London, then there'll be no taxis and nobody can go anywhere. But if the taxi driver opens up, you'll say, do I want to drive my taxi today? And then he might get in contact with these people that want to go places, and he'll say, I'd love to do that. And then you'll have a totally different taxi driver. You'll have somebody who just loves driving a taxi, doing it for the love of it and not out of survival. Certainly there'll be a huge shift, because if people wake up, they'll become honest. And that is in fact the basis of everything we've talked about today. It's being honest. Are you honest with yourself? Are you honest with the other? And honesty has all these levels. Yes, of course I want to do this because I've got to keep my kids in food and I've got to look after my family, and this of course. And then you look under there and you might find another level. Look under there, you might find another level. There are levels of this honesty. When you come to the bottom of this, when you've got rid of every lie out of your life, you will be love. Not loving. You will be love. Everything you do. You'll never grab a door handle unconsciously again. You'll touch the door handle as though it has the consciousness that it does have. You'll never throw your shoes down. You'll never be unpleasant with your clothes. Everything you will realize has a consciousness. Everything. And you'll just treat everything beautifully, naturally. And you will take care. And then out of this openness that happens in you comes a response. You no longer do anything. What happens is you respond to a situation. So you're walking past the beggar and you look or you sense. When you're really open, you don't even have to look. You sense. And you'll know whether this person needs money or not. And you'll know how much. You will know, and you will respond choicelessly. Even if you give them your last $10, you'll know that they need it more than you. And you won't worry at all because you know you're being taken care of. When you're open, everything you need comes to you. Or you might feel that this person is just on a scam. That's the way they like spending their time. They don't need the money. And you'll know that. And when I say no, it's nothing active. You don't have to say, do they need the money or not? You don't have to have any thinking process to it at all. It's just a happening inside you. It's just a response. So you will respond to everybody and everything around you. And then that helps them respond to you.
When you were speaking just now about the heart and people living from this expansion of the heart, I was touched by the gentleness of that. And I'm wondering if you have anything to say to people now who are wanting to move into that expansion, into that gentleness, about living that.
Well, we're living on a very brutal planet. And it wasn't always like this, but we've created this way. And a cat is a very beautiful creature, but it's brutal. It kills. And we talk about Mother Nature, but Mother Nature is very cruel. It's very brutal. It just, one eats another. So this whole atmosphere is brutal. And we're talking about going back to nature, but nature is very brutal. And a lot of in nature is absolutely violent. It doesn't kill to eat, it kills for the fun of it. So the whole atmosphere is very gross. This is a very gross planet to be on. Now, we've chosen this, we've created this. We created it for a lesson. And the lesson was, let's dichotomize everything so we can see everything more clearly. When everything's one, we are actually unconscious about our consciousness. Let's separate it and look at it. We've done that. Now the experiment is over. We need to start coming back together again. And so we're living in an atmosphere that's very difficult to be loving because there's no support. The only support we have are the higher levels of which we're not in touch anymore. Occasionally a Jesus comes along, occasionally a Buddha comes along, somebody who reaches that place. But the encouragement to this place, to get to this place, is nil. Now we all talk about the horrors of war and how terrible wars are, and the majority know that. Not all of those. The generals don't know that. The soldiers don't know that. Otherwise they wouldn't be there. They're there because they want to be violent. Most policemen are there because they want to be violent, not because they want peace. They don't even realize that. There's a violence in themselves. That's why most people watch violent movies. Most of the movies have violence in them because it's a violent planet. And we're saying it's out there. It's not out there. It's in each and every one of us, without exception. It's in Jesus, it's in Buddha. This dimension is violent. With awareness, with awakening, with choicelessness, we acknowledge that violence. When you really open, you say, I could easily jump on this person, I could easily kill them. But I don't need to go there. And then slowly as that goes, it just starts to fade into the distance. As it fades into the distance, love naturally emerges. So most people are saying stop the wars, but they're warring the whole time. They're warring at work. They're trying to beat the competitor. They're trying to beat somebody else in the office to the better job. They get home, they're warring with their partner. But those are all symptoms. The symptoms come from the fact they're warring with themselves. They don't accept themselves, they don't love themselves. And if you don't accept and love yourself, you will never love anybody else. You might get infatuated, you might get a sentimental feeling for somebody, you might get some sort of caring, but you cannot love anyone else until you've learned to love yourself, because you don't know what it is. It's out there. It has to be in here. Whenever you feel anything, it's in here. It's you you're feeling, not the other. So we're living in a violent place, and that's because of unacceptance. We just need to start to accept, this is the way I am, this is what I'm doing, and then don't do anything with it. If you don't do anything with it, you'll start to see this process more clearly. As you see it, it'll move into another layer and another layer. And if you keep following these layers, you will reach whatever you want to label it. You can call it your higher self, your inner self, your light, God. You'll reach that place of just purity. Some see it as light, some see it as darkness, some see it as God. If you see it as an anything, then you haven't reached the bottom. When you reach the bottom, it's just pure isness. Now we can call that love. To call it love is a contamination. It's just an isness. It's just a gentleness, a sensitivity, a caring that's natural, that's not done. To get to that place, each of us has to look at ourselves, not anybody else. Not how can we change the politicians? How can we change the generals? You can't until you've realized that place in yourself. The moment you realize that place in yourself, you realize it in another. As soon as you've found this place of love in yourself, you realize the place of love in another, and you deal with that person, you are with that person. You commune with that person in a totally different way. That communion helps them see that part in themselves. If enough people are genuinely looking at themselves, not playing at it, not the new age games, not the pretension, but that place where saying, this is what my life is about, realizing myself, realizing my truth, then as each person blossoms, then the whole of the planet is affected. And not only the whole of the planet, the whole of the universe. Everything is affected. Now, it looks impossible because it's taken 20 years, 30 years, lifetimes for people to realize themselves. That's the tradition. So we've got that conditioning in us. It takes this long and this much effort. It's not true anymore because the experiment is over. The experiment before was to make it hard, so you had to work your way home, and on the way home you learnt things, you experienced things which the rest of the universe could benefit from. The experiment is over. The struggle on earth is over. The light is here. Now all we have to do is wake up to that. We are so caught in our darkness, so habitually in our darkness, we just think we've got to work through everything layer after layer. If you think it hard enough, you have to do it. It's over. The light is here. The realms are here. What we call angels and ascended beings and ascended masters, they're all pouring to this place at the moment and saying, it's over. Come back home now. Just let go of that place that you needed to be in as part of the experiment. Let go and you'll just fly back home on your own. The struggle is over.
Thank you, Paul.